Okay, so we are going to talk about our labor and delivery story.
Your labor and delivery.
Okay, but it's our baby. So February 7th, the day before Nix was born, we went to the gym and I was 40 weeks and 1 day on February 7th. So we went to the gym and I decided to do the stair stepper, pretty intense for a little bit, and then did a pretty fast walk on the treadmill because I really wanted to have the baby without being induced. I had an induction date set for February 12th, so I wanted to go into labor spontaneously. So we went to the gym and I tried to step it up a little bit to bring
No pun intended.
to bring on labor. So we did that, we went home, and then we went out to dinner at Chili's. We just wanted to go get soup and salad. And at dinner, Corin was saying that my water was gonna break that night. And he said it a few times during dinner. He was like, your water's definitely gonna break tonight. So we went home from dinner, it was a regular night, got ready for bed, and we went to bed that night. And then at 3:30 in the morning, I woke up. Actually, it was 3:23 in the morning. I woke up, I felt like a pop, and knew my water had broke. So right away, I said to Corin, I woke him up and said, my water just broke, it's time. So we knew it was time to go to the hospital.
I jumped right up.
Yeah, he did. So we both took a shower. We were like, didn't know when we were gonna shower again, so we both took a shower.
Well, you had planned originally that if your water broke and you weren't induced, that you wanted to take a shower.
Yeah.
Just because you don't know how long you're gonna be in labor and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to do that. So I did. I took a shower, and then Corin was like, I'll take one too. So we were really quick about it. So it was like 3:23. We looked at the time right when I said my water broke, and we left the house probably just before 4 because we both showered. We had to let the dogs out. I called my mom to let her know because she would have to get ready to get on a plane to come out here. And then we had to put all the hospital bags in the car seat in the car because we didn't have them in there. They were packed, but they weren't in the car. And we had to just get the dogs were like going wild because they knew something was going on, so we had to get everything ready to go. So and I also was trying to find something to eat because it was so early in the morning. We didn't know if anything would be open, and I knew once I got to the hospital they weren't gonna let me eat. So I grabbed some cheese and some applesauce, and I only ended up eating the applesauce. So anyways, we then go to the hospital. We go in through the ER, and they called up to labor and delivery, and they brought us up. So by the time we got up to labor and delivery, it was probably closer to 4:30. As soon as we got up there, they wanted to start monitoring me, so they hooked me up to the monitors, and then they wanted to start an IV right away. So they started an IV, and as soon as they did that, the baby's heart rate dropped, and they didn't tell us what was happening.
But 3 nurses rushed in the room,
they just
very frantic looking.
Rushed in the room, and they're like all like telling me to move to different positions, and they're just like.
And the screen went like this. There was a red line on the screen at the top that was originally, I think, like blue or something.
Actually, right before that, remember, I was like feeling really nauseous. I was like, I'm starting to feel really nauseous.
Yeah, it's good you said that.
And I said.
Because we brought a Gatorade.
We brought Gatorade, and I said, can I have the Gatorade? So he grabbed the Gatorade and got me that, and they said my blood pressure like really dropped to like in the 90s. I don't know what the bottom number, but the top number was in the 90s. So they, I guess when my heart rate dropped or blood pressure dropped, the baby's dropped.
Well, because they gave you a needle for something.
Yeah, they gave me an IV.
Oh yeah, putting the needle in.
And like, I don't know, when she did it, I guess my blood pressure dropped. Even though I'm fine with getting IVs and blood taken and stuff, I guess that one just kind of like shocked me. So they did that, and then right away everyone rushed in, and then they got the baby situated again. The nurse then called my doctor and said my contraction. I wasn't really. I was having contractions. They were really mild. They were like 10 or more minutes apart. So they wanted to start me on Pitocin right away. So the nurse called my doctor and just wanted to make sure it was okay because of the heart rate drop. So she said it was fine. They brought us over to the room that we would labor in, and then they got me started on antibiotics because I was group B strep positive. So I started on antibiotics, and then we also started on Pitocin.
But even before then, we went over the birth plan with her and all that stuff that we had printed out.
We went over the birth plan, which was basically the birth plan was what? I wasn't going to have an epidural.
Wait to cut the cord,
wait 3 minutes to cut the cord. Wait 24 hours for a bath. It said on there I was group B strep positive. It said
no meds.
No pain medicine. We wanted no pacifier for the baby, no bottles for the baby, immediate skin to skin. If the baby had to leave the room, that Corin would go with her, and that Corin would be with me the whole time. And that was really it. It was pretty, and then it had like the baby's doctor information on there. So we went over that, and they said everything was fine with that. So we went over to the room where we were going to labor in, and so they started me on Pitocin. They started me at a 2, and now it's probably like closer to like 5:36. They started Pitocin at 6, so it was like 6 o'clock now, and my water broke at 3:30. So I started Pitocin at a 2. So they got me all hooked up. I got my first round of antibiotics, IV fluids, all of that. So while they're like doing all that, I don't think we like slept at all from 6 to 10. We just kind of were like hanging out, talking to the nurse. They were like getting set up with everything.
They had a nurse switch change too.
They had a nurse switch change,
So
and then we got this nurse Deb who was like awesome. So we were just hanging out. Contractions were okay. Then around like 9 o'clock, yeah, it was probably 9. I felt like my contractions were like really picking up and like getting a lot stronger. I could really feel them. So we had a yoga ball come in, and I sat on the ball and like leaned forward on the bed, and I was just like in a lot of pain. And I was telling Corin, I was like, I don't know if I can do this without the epidural. And
I know how tough she is, so I didn't want to give right in and say, like, yes, let's get the medicine. So I wanted to make sure. I was like, are you sure that's what you want? And she said yes. But like, I still
was like
wanted
kind
to.
of at first going like back and forth. I was just like.
Yeah, but I still wanted to like just be sure. So I kept asking you. But then because I had thought beforehand, like even before labor, like what if she just says yes, but like you don't really mean it. But I guess
even on the way to the hospital, you were like, "What's your code word?" And I was like, "I don't have a code word. If I say I want it, then I want it."
Yeah.
And I was like, I had like 2 more contractions, and I had Corin come over and like push on my back, and it was just like too much. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to like do this for the whole process. And that was the one thing, like since the beginning of my pregnancy, I was like, I don't want pain medicine.
But then you said I'm not going to be a hero, like because they're ultimately you don't want to be in pain.
Yeah, and you want it to be like an enjoyable process.
Yeah,
and like,
you're not proving it to anybody.
I know. It was more like just proving it to myself that I could do it, which I don't know why. It's stupid, but and well, also like they say there could be side effects, and like I have been having the side effect with my leg goes numb. But anyway, so at 10 o'clock. It was like 9:50. I said I wanted the epidural. So I was thinking it was going to take like an hour, because that's what I've always heard, that the anesthesiologist was going to take a long time to come. Was my mom there at that point?
No.
Okay. So before that all happened, once we got to the hospital, I called my mom and said, you know, what time do you want a flight out? And we booked her a flight. So she was on a plane. Her flight left at like 10 something, and she got in. She was at the hospital by like 1. She got to the hospital at like 1. So that all happened in the kind of while things were going on. But so at 9:50-ish, I said I wanted the epidural. The anesthesiologist was in the room.
I had to leave the room, so I went and got a bagel, so I was allowed to eat.
He did. Which I wasn't even like hungry. I don't even think I said I was hungry. Like, I feel like once you get IV fluids, you're like fine. And they let me have ice chips, water, Gatorade. I just couldn't eat food. So I felt fine with not eating. I was getting nauseous on and off. So I actually had Zofran for the nausea. So then the anesthesiologist came in 10 minutes later, and she was like, we'll have you feeling better in like 10-15 minutes. So it was like a very quick process for me. Like, I said I wanted it, and then like literally like 5-10 minutes later, she was in the room. Corin left. We got it all set up. So for me, the epidural, like people say it's not painful. The only thing you feel is like the local anesthesia, that first numbing shot. So that for me was not bad. For me, I could feel everything she was doing, and I was like telling them that it hurt. I was like, that really hurts. And they're like, are you sure it's not just pressure? I'm like, no, I can feel it. So they gave me they gave me another injection because I could feel everything. So after they did that, then I couldn't feel it. And it worked pretty quickly that I could not feel my legs at all. I could wiggle my toes, but like I couldn't feel like my legs. And then I would like, they'd want to roll me over because this whole time they're like increasing the Pitocin. So at 6 a.m. I got my first, like they started Pitocin and it was at a 2. By 10 a.m. I was at like, I think I was at a 10, level
like a
10.
9 plus,
No,
right?
not dilated. No.
Oh.
For the Pitocin, they were like at a 10, because so they increased Pitocin by 2. So I started at 6 a.m. at a 2, and then at 10 I was already getting 10. So they like increased it really quickly. So I got that epidural. That was fine. They had me on my side, and then my doctor came in to check how dilated I was. So I was thinking, because my contractions were like really hurting, I was gonna be like maybe like, I don't know, like a 3 or a 4, which when I got to the hospital at 4 or whatever in the morning, I was a 1 and 30% effaced. So at 10, when I got the epidural and my doctor came in, I was still at a 1 and I was 90% effaced. So I was super bummed that I had to get an epidural at a 1. That's like, I don't even know. But my doctor was like, this is great because when it's your first baby, you have to be effaced before you really start dilating. So I was just like, okay, whatever. So then I got the epidural. We like hung out, was working, writing emails, just kind of like doing stuff. And then my mom came, and she was just kind of hanging out, and then at like 3:30 I told my nurse that I was having a lot of pressure. I was like, it's not pain, but like, it's like, I don't know if the epidural's wearing off, but like I feel a lot of pressure. And she's like, okay, let's go ahead and check you again, because if you're feeling a lot of pressure, then things probably progressed. So I was checked at 10 and then again at 3:30. So at 3:30 she said I was 9 plus and like pretty much ready to go. So I was shocked because I was only checked the entire time I was at the hospital 3 times, when we first got there at 10 in the morning, at 3:30. So there was no like, okay, you're at a 3 or you're at a 5. It just was like 1 to like 9 plus ready to push. So the nurse said I had 2 options. I could either start to push then, or we could let the baby kind of like labor down on her own. And if the baby labored down on her own, then I, probably wouldn't have to push as long. So I was like, let's just let the baby come down more, because she was like still really high. So she's like, okay, that sounds good. So for 2 more hours, so that was at 3:30. So for 2 hours, they let the baby just kind of like come down on her own. So I did feel a lot of pressure, but it wasn't painful. So we just both were hanging out. We were like both working, and just kind of, my mom was sitting in there with us. Or no, at that point my mom went home to like walk the dogs. So my mom went home to walk the dogs, and I said, because we were gonna get a snowstorm, so I said, go home, walk the dogs, and then come back. So then at 5:30, the nurse, Deb, who was amazing, came in and said, okay, I think, we can start to push. So I was thinking it was gonna be like
a gradual process.
Yeah, we were gonna like wait for the doctor. Like, I knew the doctor doesn't come in till like the baby's ready to be delivered, but I thought it would be like more nurses would come in, but it was just in the room at that time, it was just me, Corn, and the nurse. Like, there was nobody else. Like, I thought there would be like a team of nurses. So she says, this is what's gonna happen. She's like, you're gonna take a deep breath in, and then you're gonna hold and push for 10 seconds, and then
we're holding her legs up on like the stirrups.
So Corn and the nurse would both hold my legs up when I would push. So you would take a deep breath, hold and push for 10 seconds, then take a deep breath, hold and push for 10 seconds, take a deep breath, hold and push for 10 seconds. So you do 3 sets of those. And I was like, okay. So then we like we think there's going to be people coming in.
Or
she's
like a pause.
She's and she's like, okay.
Start.
You ready? I'm like, wait, what? What am I doing? And it just, like, started. So Corin would grab one leg, because, like, my legs were, like, dead weight. They were heavy, right?
Yeah.
They were, like logs. I couldn't move them. So Deb held one leg, and Corin held the other, and I, like, crunched up and pushed. And she was kind of like, you know, she did say, like, I don't want you to get discouraged, because sometimes it's like the baby comes down and then goes back up. The baby comes down and goes back up. So she's like, it could be 2 hours. It could be, like, we don't know. So pretty early on, she was like, you see that? Like, she put a bright light and showed Corin, like, there's the head. And I was like, oh, okay, like, things are starting to progress. So we did that, and my contractions, she actually at that point turned the Pitocin up to 14, because my contractions weren't coming like every 2 minutes. They were still kind of like further apart. So I was not, I kind of had like a nice break in between. When she turned it up, I don't know, they started coming a little bit quicker, maybe like every 2 minutes. I would push, and then I'd have a little bit of a break. So then she called the doctor to let her know I was pushing, and she's like, yeah, we'll call you when it should be time. And then
she even said, like, we'll be here a little bit, or something
she's like, we'll be here a little bit. And then while she was on the phone, I had another contraction, and she was like, okay, go ahead and push. But she was over at like the monitor, not holding my leg.
Yeah, so I'm holding one leg.
So Corin's holding one leg, and I'm like,
down.
I'm trying to, like, she told me to hold my own leg, and I'm like, I cannot, like, hold my own leg. It's too heavy. But as she's doing that, she's like peeking around. She's like, oh no, I think you should come up now. I think it's gonna be a lot sooner. So so then they said, you know, the next couple of contractions, I don't want you to push, because we gotta wait for the doctor. So I was like, okay. So
but make sure they're on the same page, because the nurse.
No,
Deb,
that was after.
Okay.
Not yet. So so we wait for the doctor to come in, and I was so happy. Just to kind of like backtrack a little bit, when we got to the hospital, we got there at like 4 a.m. So the shifts for like the doctors and nurses, it's like 7 to 7. So we got there towards the end of a shift, and the doctor who was on when we got there is my least favorite doctor in the practice, the one that I told Corin, like, I do not want this lady to deliver our baby. The doctor who came on at 7 is my favorite doctor, and I was so happy that she was going to be the one who was probably going to deliver my baby. So I was so happy. So that was just kind of a side note. But so anyways, I didn't push for those 2 contractions while we waited for the doctor to come in. She was like in a surgery or something. So she comes in, starts checking everything out. She's like, yep, baby's head is there. We're gonna get ready. So on the next contraction, I push, and that's when the head's coming down, and I was like, I feel a lot of pressure. And she's like, yeah, I think I had like 2 pushes, like 2 contractions, and she's like, yep, the head was like crowning. So the doctor said,
Deb is like, all right, big push.
Deb, the nurse.
She's like, big push, 3, 2, and then like the nurse, the doctor was like, no.
Yeah, so like the nurse is telling me to push, and the doctor is telling me not to push, and the doctor told me not to push because like as the head was crowning, she wanted like my body to just kind of like react to help, you know, prevent tearing. So she wanted my body to just react and not push on that contraction. But Deb, the nurse, is like, push, and my doctor's like, don't push. And so it was kind of like, so I was obviously listening to my doctor. So I didn't push on that one, but then the next one, she's like, okay, big push. And I think with that last push, she was like born. So it was a very like interesting moment for me. I think when I pushed and she was born, like it was a lot of pressure, but it wasn't like, the baby's in here in the rock and play, and she's like grunting. She's asleep. But so I pushed, and she came out, and it wasn't like the most pain I ever felt in my life or anything like that. To me, like the contractions were before I got the epidural were way worse than the actual delivery. But as she was like coming out, I was like looking at Corin, and Corin was kind of like watching the whole thing, but I was like looking at him like unsure of like that moment. Like I remember very like, specifically like how I was looking at you, like how I felt. I was just like very unsure about like what was happening, even though everything was fine. I was just like, life is about to change forever. Yeah, the doctor had asked me if I wanted to like feel her head, and I was just like, but So they said when they were going to put her skin to skin right away, that they could put a towel down or they could put her right on me. And she had a lot of like vernix on her skin and like just was like really gooky. So I was like, can I have a towel? Can I have a towel? So they put a towel down and then they put her on me, and we said we wanted to wait 3 minutes before clamping the cord. So they put her on me and she was like crying and screaming. And Corin was crying. I wasn't crying, but...
I was, like, tearing.
Yeah, he was tearing. And then as soon as he came out, he had the camera ready to, like, take pictures of, like, those first moments. So he was taking pictures. And, like, I don't know, it was just, like, an overwhelming moment in a good way. That, like, she was finally here. And, like, her cord was actually wrapped around her neck, which Deb had warned us before. She said... because throughout labor her heart rate kept dropping, that her cord was probably around her neck, that was fine. It wasn't going to be an issue, that the doctor would just slip her finger and release the cord. But if it was too tight, we wouldn't be able to do skin to skin right away. They'd have to take her and like cut the cord right away. But the doctor was able to just get it off, and then they put her on my chest. So she stayed there for the time while we waited for the cord to stop pulsing, and then after 3 minutes, Corin cut the cord. And the doctor said I had no tearing, I didn't need any stitches, and I was like so happy about that. And then after that, she went over to be weighed and measured and all of that stuff.
They did the footprints.
They did the footprints, which I was a little bit annoyed about that because I wanted to wait like at least an hour before doing all that stuff, because they say they don't need to do it right away. It wasn't a big deal that they did it right away. I mean, I did skin to skin as soon as she came out, and then as soon as they measured her and all that stuff and cleaned her off a little bit, they brought her right back over to me, and I started nursing her right away. But she weighed 6 pounds, 12 ounces at birth, and she was 20 inches long, and she was born at 6:07.
And I have to give Molly props because Deb had said, if you want to get a meal for the night, and this was at 5:45 maybe, or 5:30?
Yeah.
To get the baby out before 6:30.
Yeah.
So she can get her dinner for the night, or else we would have missed out on that in the hospital.
Dinner, so.
Which, come to think of it afterwards, we probably could have just placed an order.
Yeah, ahead of time. But I was like, no, I want dinner. Because at that point, like, I was just getting nauseous, I think, I was on ampicillin for the GBS. I was on Pitocin for contractions to, like, speed up labor. I was on Zofran, and I was on one other thing. I had an epidural, I think, and then I was on fluids. I don't know. I had a lot of things hooked up, so I was like just getting nauseous from like all the different things, and I think not having food. So I was like, I need to have dinner. So anyways, Deb said that, and I was like, all right, we're gonna do this. So I asked Deb how long I pushed for, and she said the total time from like the start of pushing till the time the baby was here was just under 40 minutes. And for some of that, I was like not pushing because we had to wait for the doctor to come for like a couple of contractions because the baby was like coming faster than they thought. So I think it was pretty good. For like the first birth, they said, you know, it was good timing, and it felt okay to me. I think for me the worst part was probably the contractions before the epidural and getting the epidural. I did not like that. And with the epidural, like, and her heart rate dropping, I kept having to like go on one side. They would like roll me over to one side, and like my side would hurt, or like my back would hurt. And it felt like I was in the bed, like I had like a huge arch in my back or something, and I could not like pull myself up. So every time Deb would adjust me and then she would leave, I would tell Corin, I'm like, pull me over a little bit, because like I don't feel like it's enough, because I couldn't roll over. I'd like, it's just like dead weight.
And they gave you that peanut ball for in
yeah,
between
they gave me the peanut ball, and I had that in between my legs like most of the labor after I got that epidural.
So that probably helped.
So they said that really helps to like kind of bring the, like, I think open up your pelvis, and like the baby can kind of labor down on her own. So those were kind of the main
It felt like a pretty just like smooth process.
Yeah.
Like
I
it
feel
wasn't
like when you say
stressful.
the time of hours, like, because my water broke at 3:23 in the morning, and I had her at 6:07. So you feel like in terms of time, like that's a long time to be laboring and having a baby, and it's like, I don't know, it's like 15-ish hours. So when you say, oh yeah, I was in labor for 15 hours, like, it didn't feel like I was in labor for 15 hours.
No, like,
because, like,
yeah.
because I wasn't in painful labor for 15 hours. Like, if I had not gotten the epidural and I was having those contractions from 10 a.m. till the time I delivered at 6, that would have been horrible, I think. I am so happy that I ended up getting an epidural, because for me it was just, like, perfect. I was able to work, I was able to relax, and kind of just, like, do everything I needed to do, and that made the time go by faster. We had an awesome nurse. So my thing with getting an epidural is I wanted to have, like, a good experience. I didn't want the epidural to, like, interfere with that, but I feel like it was a really great experience for our first baby.
It was, yeah. I didn't. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, I had been, like, really nervous about how it was gonna be, and I remember, like, I didn't think Corin would, like, watch the whole thing, but he did, and, like, it was fine. So yeah, so I had her at 6:07. I ordered my meal. They brought it in. We did skin to skin, nursed her for a while, and then around, like, 9, they brought us to our postpartum room. So that was really it for labor and delivery. Overall, it was a really great experience. We were only in the hospital from the time she was born, so she was only in the hospital for 25 hours. They released us the next day. So we had a very short hospital stay, which was nice. I didn't think that would be the case because I was GBS positive. I thought they would want Nix to stay to be monitored, but they said, you know, everything with me was fine and everything with her was fine. So we were able to leave the next day. So we left Friday evening. I had her on Thursday evening. We left Friday evening. So it was a really quick stay. And we felt fine going home because, one, my mom had gotten there and she has had kids and, you know, is really comfortable with babies. So we felt fine to go home with her. If she wasn't there, I might have been a little bit more nervous to go home. But we were just like, yeah, let's go. So that was really nice. Happy we were able to do that and didn't have to stay in the hospital. And overall, it was just a really great experience. And now our baby's here, so we're just adjusting to that.
We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, we will.
One more time.
Yeah, so any, like, thing about labor and delivery that you thought would be different, or?
No, I mean, like I said, it was pretty smooth. It wasn't like, you know, anything I'd expected where it was like,
yeah.
The only time that was like a little scary was right in the beginning.
When
the nurses ran in and I saw their faces a little bit, like, they were a little frantic, like.
And they didn't, like, say anything.
Yeah, they weren't saying anything. They were just like, move to your side, and they were like, they seemed a little nervous. So that got me a little nervous. Yeah, but I mean, they handled what they handled, and then they were like, okay, all better, and then they left.
Yeah.
The screen went away from red and started acting normal again.
Yeah.
So that was fine. But after that moment, the rest of the time I kept looking at the blood pressure. So that, like, sort of threw me off for the rest of the time just because I didn't know what to look for, but
you knew if it, like,
yes, it went down a little bit. So that if I hadn't seen that in the beginning, it probably would have been a little better.
And so we didn't do any birth classes or anything. Do you think that was a good decision, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was fine.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it would have prepared me either
any differently.
More or less. Yeah.
I think if we would have done a birth class, I would have been a little bit more scared because they, especially because our friends did, and they said with the C-section, they show you how the whole thing happens. So if we had to get a C-section, like, you know, like, I wouldn't have want to seen that.
Yeah, everything's different.
So I just kind of wanted to have, like, our own experience and, like, have it for ourselves. Although I did watch a lot of, like, birth stories, like, natural ones on how people deal with the pain. But for me, yeah, and if, you know, we go and have another kid and deliver the same way, I would 100% get the epidural again because, you know, even though for me it was painful to get it, it was so worth it. So I think not doing a birth class was totally fine. And so, yeah.
And the breastfeeding was all right and all that.
Yeah, I'm happy we did the breastfeeding class because that did, you know, prepare us for a little bit. So we're still kind of just working through that and doing that. So all is well.
A successful labor and delivery.
Yeah, and baby is here.
Baby's
and she's
here.
born at 40 weeks and 2 days, and I would have had an induction on 40 weeks and 6 days. So my water broke on my own, which was great, so I didn't have to be induced. I mean, I ended up kind of needing an induction with the Pitocin anyways, but I didn't have to go and I was originally going to have to go in and do Cervidil and, you know, that whole thing. So overall, it was, yeah, a great labor and delivery. So
Success, smooth process.
Success, and baby's here now. So that's it. All right. You can click the button.